Hi, guys. So, in the last reading, if you watched, because I read the story to you, um, and I just did that because we don't have textbooks right now, like because you guys are quarantined, at least in this class. And I just thought it might be nice to have someone just read it to you. But again, you don't have to click on those if you don't want to. It's just, I love to read the story, and I think sometimes when you get to high school, you don't love to read as much as you used to. And let's bring the fun back into reading, like reading time, right? I know you're grown and you could read it by yourself, but sometimes it's fun just to be in a little book club. So, but okay. Let me go back to what I was going to say. In the last the last video that I posted, I kind of mentioned some of this, but I made an infographic a couple years ago just of like all the things that happen. And sometimes this is a thing that helps me read is to pick a celebrity that I want to cast to the character in my mind, and then that celebrity is always in my mind when I read about the character. So, if you guys remember, like I mentioned about Homer, this is oral tradition. It was probably sung by a great poet, also known as a bard. If we're talking about the bard, we're talking about Shakespeare. But in the epic would be organized into three main parts. It would be like the Trojan War, um, the Adventures of Odysseus, or the Fall of Troy, the Adventures of Odysseus, and like that includes him going home and judging the suitors, like and like punishing them. So three main parts. That way it would be easy to remember. And then it's in dactylic hexameter, which is a sort of rhythm that would probably make it easier to remember too. And when we read Shakespeare, we talked about, um, like, okay, I am a pentameter. Oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night. And like that makes it easier to remember. That makes it easier to teach to kids. That makes it easier as an actor to remember your lines. So, like, I always do it too. Like I'll say in a research paper, I'll say Times New Roman 12-point font, 1-inch margins are what your teachers want. Because it's just easy. If I say it enough times, maybe it'll stick in your head. So that's kind of the idea between or about Homer. Now, Homer might have been a woman. We definitely think that he or she was blind because of the motifs of blindness throughout the Odyssey. Um, and okay, that's probably good for now. But again, there was no language back then, so you would or not, there was no language. There was no written language back then. So when it was finally written down, I know I'm repeating myself, it was written down on animal skin when there was actually like written language to actually write it with. And then probably by that time, the story had changed. So, okay, so there it began kind of with the suitors contest in the last reading, if you remember. And Helen was said to have a most beautiful face, a face that would cause a war. And we know that many Greek warriors are interested in marrying Helen. That would include Achilles, Menelaus, Agamemnon, Odysseus, even like Patroclus and Ajax. But it turns out that they all make an oath that says they'll protect the person that gets to marry Helen because she's so beautiful. They're like considering that beauty as a danger and she might get stolen away. So to avoid that mutiny, or at least like protection against that mutiny, even her stepdad or her dad, the book says like Zeus is her father, but then like King Tyndareus is her mother's husband. So I don't know, seems conflicting, but the king wants, all the suitors to promise that they're going to make a pact and protect whoever ends up getting to be her husband. So Menelaus wins, and this is Sean Connery, but he just recently died. I'm so sad. So pick another silver fox to represent Menelaus if you want to, but he's also king of Sparta, so he's a warrior. You don't want to mess with the king of Sparta, even though he might be an older gent. He's still charming and he's still very tough. So it would be a mistake to steal her away. And I always have an issue like, why do they call her Helen of Troy? I don't understand because she's Helen of Sparta. Yes, she was taken to Troy, or she escaped to Troy. We're not really told the real details in Hamilton. So I like that Hamilton leaves it open. You can make it whatever you want. Was she a faithless woman, or was she stolen? I hate that idea of her being stolen and not having a choice. But so maybe that's why Hamilton left that open for us. And Menelaus is older than a lot of the suitors. We said that, this is a fun fact about the Spartans. They would send their 7-year-old boys away to be trained from 7 to 30. And then they would come back to Spartan society. And they definitely weren't used to women at that point. So there's some interesting marriage customs there. And if you want to look it up, you're totally welcome to. I won't say it on the video. I could tell you in class if you ask me. So a few years pass, and then we know that there's the wedding on Mount Olympus. You've already read this, but the goddess Eris is jealous and mad because she's the goddess of chaos, discord. She's mad that she's not invited. She throws a golden apple into the hall. We know that 3 goddesses are interested in this apple. The apple says for the fairest. And Zeus is too smart to choose, so he ends up saying, Paris will choose, right? And unfortunately, Paris is living away from his parents with some nymph. But he was raised by shepherds, but he's kind of taken up with this nymph, and they're in love. But these 3 goddesses present themselves, and they say, one of them offers, power. I think that's Athena. Hera offers something else amazing, and then we have Aphrodite, who offers the most beautiful woman in the world. Of course, Paris is interested in beauty. He's described as a coward. Hamilton has a kind of a nasty tone towards him. And unfortunately, though, she's already married. So you have to be careful what you wish for. That's a common archetype. The beauty contest is a common archetype. And you might say, Miss Stevens, what is an archetype? Okay, I got you. An archetype is, do you guys know what a meme is? Of course you know what a meme is. So it's just the fact that we all can relate to, the Kermit meme. It's my favorite. When he's sipping the tea and he's like, well, that's none of my business. We all have had a moment like that in our lives. It's these archetypes are part of our DNA, our shared experience as human beings. And, we try to pretend we're not connected. No, we're very connected. The fact that we can recognize those shows that it is in our very DNA of our existence. So I'm going to pause really fast because I don't want this to freeze. Okay, so definition of archetype, just to review. It's a character, situation, or item that is seen across time and across culture. So across time and across culture, there have been many beauties that people would fight over. There's been many suitors contests. There's been many contests of strength. If you say a labor, you would think I think of Hercules, his several labors that he had to do. There's a quest, and I don't know if you are into The Mandalorian, but I love that show. It's amazing. And we all can recognize The Mandalorian, he's this kind of dark knight, but he follows a code. I don't want to spoil this for you, but he's on a quest. However, this quest takes him off on other quests, and he has to make alliances, and he has this character he has to protect, and he has these modes that he has to travel by, but then that hurts. His ship gets damaged, and he has to go to different planets, and there's different characters and different bodies of governance he has to deal with. So these are common archetypes. So that idea of a epic hero, the epic hero is going to endure suffering. The epic hero is going to travel to distant lands. He or she is going to be alone, because that's the thing about being a hero. It's not easy. It's a task that only one person can do it. If everybody could do it, they would all do it, but it's not easy. It's something that everybody wishes. It's a very lonely path too. He's that lone wolf. But the epic hero has to also endure supernatural weather, and also is helped or harmed by interfering gods or goddesses, and then it has to undergo a quest. So there's certain criterion that the epic hero has to go through. And usually they're on a quest for some sort of item or thing. Um, and another thing is they embody the qualities that a civilization finds honorable or beautiful or something. So, all right. So going back, so Paris ends up choosing the apple. Well, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, to get the apple, and she ends up being stolen away. The covenant that the suitors make has to be fulfilled, so they all have to protect her against Troy. So then Odysseus, like when he's called to war, because he would have been one of the possible suitors of Helen, he had already settled down with Penelope, and they have a son, Telemachus or Telemachus, however you want to say it. But they end up he ends up pretending to be mad, and a messenger finds out that he's not really mad. And then Achilles also is like dressed as a girl, we know, and his mom doesn't want him to go to war because there's a prophecy against him too, that says if he goes to this Trojan war, he will end up getting an untimely death, unfortunately. But Odysseus like tricks Achilles, of course, because he's a trickster archetype, and they both go to war. He convinces Achilles, like, we've got to fight. This is like your calling. Don't you want to fight? And warriors want to fight. Ends up, oh, by the way, I got a picture of Prince Harry here. Back when, he was like Prince Harry. I guess he's just Harry now, but yes, Odysseus was a ginger. So you can think of all the famous gingers. Go. Famous gingers. Go. Chucky from Rugrats. Ariel. Oh, isn't Ariel the most relatable Disney princess? If you don't agree, I totally get it. But let me think. Who else is a famous ginger? Why am I drawing a blank? But yes. Anyways, sorry, this is way too long of a recording. But Odysseus, we know that he's a trickster, but Achilles, like, we know that he was like the kind of mama's boy. Does that mean he's not tough? No, but I'd say like he because he's a mama's boy, he is tough, but I'd say he is emotional. That's what I'll say about Achilles. But that makes it seem like he's, more. He's probably a better warrior because of that emotional aspect to his personality. Now, we all know the myth of Achilles. We know that he was dipped into the Styx River when he was young by his mother. She could only hold him by the heel. Apparently, she didn't want to lose him in the river, which I totally understand. How many archetypes are there about like mothers and rivers and their babies being like put down the river or like dipped in the river? So many archetypes, so many archetypal stories about that. But we know that there's going to be something that happens to his heel to get him harmed. And we know that so far in the book, as far as we've read, 255, there has been a war raging between Troy and the Greeks. Troy is a city surrounded by a wall. And we do think, like, actually, archaeologists think there was a Troy because it was set on a trade route. Also, a very famous archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann, I don't know how to spell his name, he actually was like this millionaire, but he had this affinity for digging and like finding treasures. There was a mound that archaeologists believed had Troy in it, like a big, burial mound or whatever. He ended up like digging right into the middle of it and finding treasures like Agamemnon's death mask. That's what he called it. He found the jewels of Helen of Troy or whatever. Now people look down on him because they thought, how dare you just dig into this mound willy-nilly without any sort of organization. So we do think there was actually a Troy. It was a city that was leveled by a fire, and that's what happens in the story. But it was set on a trade route, and there is evidence of that there was like maybe a war or some sort of fire. But this is the myth that we're talking about. The wars raged on for 10 years, and in our reading so far, there have been fights among the Greeks, right? Fights among the Trojans, fights among the gods. So just to summarize, the Greeks are fighting amongst each other. Number one, they weren't all square about what happened with Agamemnon's innocent daughter, Iphigenia. Number two, Agamemnon stole a girl from her father. Apollo wasn't happy about that. I believe it was Apollo. I have to look back. And then because he was mad that he had to give the woman back, he ended up stealing a woman from Achilles. Stealing women is the whole reason why they were in this war in the first place. Like Helen, obviously, they were fighting to get Helen back. So they're all big hypocrites. And then obviously like Hector and all of Troy they're all pretty unhappy with Paris, who stole Helen away and caused this whole war. So maybe one thing to take away is Hamilton suggesting that this is hypocritical. When you're a warrior, make sure that you're fighting for the right values. Another warning might be one should be careful about the pacts they make, like the promises, because fulfilling them may not be as easy as making them. Have you ever made a promise and then regretted it immediately? I'm too tired now. Another one is, let's see. What can we say? What it's not even worth it fighting for a woman that may have run away too from her husband. But what's another? I'm trying to think. I just had it in my head, but of course I forgot. Hold on, let me pause. Okay, I remembered. Don't anger the gods, because that's something that could cause you a lot of trouble. Prophecies always end up coming true. That's another one. So ends up, we know that the Trojan city is going to burn. We know that, Paris and Hector, are probably going to die. We also know that Achilles is going to die. But I think the more and more these people try to avoid their fate, they're kind of like fish wriggling on the line. And the more they wriggle, the more death is going to get them in it's his or her clutches. Let's personify death. So all those things are things I learned. But the most important thing that I learned from this story so far is your selfishness is really going to get you into a lot of trouble. Paris as a guest should have behaved more honorably, in the house of Menelaus in Paris, but he didn't. And so because of his selfishness, his whole city is suffering. So that's just kind of so far where we are in the reading, and the gods are all fighting amongst each other. We know that Zeus is trying to stay out of it. We know that Hera won't stay out of it. She does everything to annoy him. And he's trying not to choose sides, but then Thetis, the beautiful sea nymph, gets involved. Oh my gosh. So that so far is my interpretation of the reading one.